Don't call Patrick Shirley. For today, that's what we have to remember.
Okay.
Most important thing of the entire day. No, that's right.
Oh, the entire day. Hey, everybody. Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. Look who we have today. We have Isaac Terranez.
Hello.
And Patrick Southern from LumaForge.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And we're going to talk about the smell of a grill can spark up nostalgia.
Which is really fitting because the Mac Pro, right?
Well,
Yes.
that's true.
I mean, the cheese grater design does spark up nostalgia.
So, who was surprised about that design?
I mean, I was.
Everybody?
For sure.
Everybody?
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, how else could they fit all those PCIe slots in a design? It has to be kind of square.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't
When
it?
they moved away from like the plastic casing and went back to a metal casing, which should help with letting heat out of the enclosure as opposed to trapping it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
and I
true.
don't know if you guys saw this, but somebody had recorded footage of Tim Cook and Johnny Ive talking near that Mac Pro during the press junket, and Mr. I was saying that the reason why they have those layers as they are is because it's for better thermal output. So they wanted to not repeat that mistake on the 2013, you know?
Yeah. I love how the holes are bigger than what we had on the old cheese grater. And again, it's probably because they said that they were throwing 300 watts of power to the CPU. And the AMD Radeon Duo thing, the
RX 580 or the 580X.
Is that what it was?
Oh, the MPX module.
Oh, the MPX module, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the MPX module was taking an additional 500 watts of power. So when you've got 1.4 kilo, I mean, seriously, you should consider putting this thing on its own breaker in your house.
Circuit, right?
Oh,
exactly.
That's not a bad idea, actually.
I mean, 1.4 kilowatts of power. You know what? You can maybe put another 600 watts of power on that circuit without blowing it. So if you've got a 20 amp circuit, you should probably dedicate it just to your monitor and Mac Pro, and then make sure that you use a separate. Like, this is a power hog. This is not an energy efficient machine. This is, the 1,000-pound processing gorilla.
Right. But that's what we wanted, right? We wanted a pro machine.
Yes, we did.
So I think what happened was Apple went in and they got the pros together in the same room and they said, what do you want? And they said, we want A, we want B, we want C, we want D, we want E, we want F. And Apple said, okay. And they gave them everything they wanted.
I mean, I think you're exactly right.
I mean, I didn't expect 8 PCIe slots. If I would have said maybe 4.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And what, 3 or 4 of them are double wides?
I believe so.
4 double wides, 3 single wides, and 1 half wide that is they automatically insert an I/O card. So you've got a half wide taken up by an I/O card, then you've got 7 other PCIe slots, and you can obviously take that I/O card out and replace it with something else if you want.
Well, that's the interesting thing. So I have in my studio downstairs, the recording studio downstairs, I have a PCIe card for my Mode 2 interface that has 24 I/O, up to 24-bit. And I'm hoping that that'll work. And I don't know why it wouldn't. It's a standard card. But I've been stuck with my old Power Mac down there with that card system to this point.
Yeah,
so,
and that's probably going to be a question of whether or not Motu decides to write something for, something beyond Mojave, if there is something that works in something Mojave and
gotcha.
And prior to. But that was another, I mean, not to derail this, but that was another exciting element with macOS Catalina. So, but we'll stick with the Mac Pro. Let's stick with the Mac Pro for now.
Well, listen, the Mac Pro was the biggest news yesterday. People are still talking about it. It was very easy to predict that people were going to be complaining about the price, okay?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Of course. I mean, if you're complaining about the price, it's probably not for you. This is a pro machine. It's not necessarily for, reading emails and surfing on the internet, although you obviously can do that very fast. But
well, and another funny complaint is there is the crowd that's like, please, we wanted a pro machine. Then this is released, and it's like, well, this is too pro. It's too much. Not on the price, but on the specs.
Well, that's true. That's very true.
So again, there's just always going to be those that people will never be pleased by what Apple does.
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite comments I've seen out there so far are, "You're never going to use more than 128 gigs of RAM." Well, then don't configure it with the 1.5 terabytes of RAM.
Right. Now, is anybody going to do that? I guess maybe somebody in Hollywood might. There's somebody that has a big, gigantic budget, but that's going to be a fortune.
My guess is that is for the people who are going about their day saying, you know what, today I'm going to build a Bitcoin mining operation.
Yeah.
That's possible. I'd also even say like there are some who I follow, like your Ash Thorpes and your Nick Vegas with Grayscale Gorilla, and they said Grayscale Gorilla, excuse me, that they said because the Mac is underpowered, we can't stay with it. But boy, that was another big part of yesterday's announcement too. Is Otoy, Maxon with Redshift, they're writing specifically to the Mac Pro, and now you come back to that whole idea of RAM between that and the MPX modules, and that's going to bring, I would think, if that was the line in the sand, that's going to bring them back, or they're going to at least think about coming back to using the Mac for that work, that 3D, that motion design work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, here's where 1.5 terabytes of RAM becomes helpful is you're working with a lot of image sequences and you're doing RAM previews in After Effects, and you're working at 4K, 6K, 8K. Now you've got the ability to cache long portions of footage locally on RAM while you're working in those VFX. So that's going to be helpful for those guys. I think it's also not that you'll use that entire 1.5 terabytes, but I think for people who are working on longer projects, especially like in Final Cut Pro 10, we've got all of these waveforms and thumbnails that have to be generated and then held in RAM so that we can quickly browse through everything. So the more assets you have inside of your Final Cut Pro 10 library, I think the easier it's going to be to browse through all of that very quickly without having to wait for those thumbnails and waveforms to update again and again and again because they're held in RAM. So maybe not all 1.5 terabytes, but I think, I'm currently cutting a feature film and I'd love to see how much of that footage and how much of that timeline I could keep, snappy working with that much RAM.
Well, obviously, your budget also has a factor. That's
yes.
What?
Your budget's good.
What's money got to do with it?
Well,
except for Patrick.
Well, that's true. Apple's just going to give you one, so that'll be fine.
No,
Maybe just to borrow.
No, they're not.
I doubt it. Yeah, I really like my iMac Pro. It's really nice. But yes, I would very much like a Mac Pro. I doubt. I was joking. Money is important.
No, of course. So I'm in the market for a new Mac over the next 6 months or a year, and it'll either be an iMac Pro, but I think I'm just going to hold off and wait till I can afford a Mac Pro without the display. Okay, I'm not going to get the display. It's too much for what I do. Just basically editing. I'm not doing anything mission critical. So the Mac Pro I can probably handle getting that, and I'm thinking I might hold off long enough to get the Mac Pro. That thing is just gorgeous.
Yeah, and if you had that versus the iMac Pro right now, I would absolutely, wait for that Mac Pro because of everything, expandability, modularity. That's what, for me, even like the iMac Pro, you can't swap out the RAM unless you go to a tech to do that.
And I love my old Mac Pros, the old cheese graters. I love them. So this is the same. I was shocked. I mean, 8 PCIe slots, absolutely incredible. I thought maybe we'd be lucky to get 4. So,
well, and then you have things like the Afterburner card,
Well, we haven't even got
Yeah.
to that yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, we haven't
So-
gotten there yet.
So just the PCIe slots, I mean, there's so many things that can be done in there. Obviously, in audio, Pro Tools, if they still have their cards, you can put them in there. The only restriction, like Isaac said, is if the drivers are written for Catalina. Is that what it is coming up?
Yeah, 1015.
That's right. Yeah, are the drivers up to date? So, I mean, a few things that I'm really interested to see on the PCIe side. Obviously, video I/O cards. When I was working on the Challenger Disaster stuff back in 2015, we had to pull out an old cheese grater to be able to capture all of our archival tapes up to HD. And instead of having to use some sort of outboard Thunderbolt device, which we can also do, we can now just plug in like a deck link or the AJA Kona 5 into the Mac Pro, and we can, up-res that direction. And, it seems like Blackmagic's going the way of 8K on everything. So, I'm envisioning a very near future where archival media can be up-resed to 8K. Not that there's any additional detail that you'll get out of that, right?
Right.
But if you're matching 8K interviews and that sort of a thing, then I think that'll be very interesting. But also, if you're working with LTO, you now have the ability to install like a SAS card into the Mac Pro. If you're working with something like a Jellyfish or the
Right.
then you can plug in new network cards. You've got two 10 gig ports, but you could theoretically work at 25 gig, 40 gig, 50 or 100 gig for network storage access, which is something that we couldn't do on the Mac previously, and
Right.
definitely not built in. But now you don't need adapters. You can just plug the card straight into the Mac Pro. So, I'm seeing a future where people are working with a Jellyfish and they're doing 4K DPX and EXR off of a Jellyfish. And using that 1.5 terabytes of RAM for their VFX caching, locally. So you're pulling down over 100 gig from the Jellyfish to the RAM at, Anyway, I think it's going to be great for VFX. I think it's going to be great for color grading and for editors who are wanting to say screw the proxy workflow, or who are wanting to generate their own proxies or dailies at super high speeds. I think this is going to be a great machine.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people wanted a Pro machine. We got a Pro machine. We got a Pro price as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? It's $6,000 starting.
Starting.
And that's with the 8-core.
Yes.
The 8-core CPU. And was it 32 terabytes of RAM at that?
Yes, 32 terabytes, and it's only the 256 SSD, but apparently they can be.
It's like up to 2
upgraded.
terabytes. Is that right?
No, it's more than that. SSD.
It's more.
4.
The
I
SSDs
think,
up to 4 terabytes.
Terabyte modules. Yeah.
Yeah. But can third-party SSDs go in there?
I'm sure that they probably could. But will macOS support them? That's the question. That's the real question, is will macOS support those third-party components? The other thing that I was hoping for and didn't see but had fingers crossed on was that we would get NVIDIA support, finally.
Oh, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I hear that all the time. I mean, we don't know that we're not, right? Is that OS dependent? It's not the Mac Pro dependent at this point, is it?
Right, Mac OS. And what's interesting is there's a fellow, his name is Guillermo Rambo. If you follow him on Twitter, I think he's @_inside. And he wrote for 9to5mac.com that part of what was coming in Catalina was a way for developers to write native device drivers for Mac OS. And, the NVIDIA Apple relationship has been pretty gnarly for the last few years, especially I think after the infamous MacBook Pro line about 2008 to 2010, where it was like all NVIDIA and it was just consistent failure. So I think 1013, you could still get those drivers or those extensions for the NVIDIA hardware. And then with 1014, I think they knew what was coming in 1015, and went, whoa, we're not gonna, exert all this effort when we know what's coming. So I think that's where people, NVIDIA can only publish what they can publish, and Apple, of course, can only publish what they can about it. But now I'd say in a couple months, maybe I'm wrong, but my little Johnny Carson, I forget the character prediction.
Karnak, I think.
Thank you.
Kodak.
My little Karnak X
Karnak, yes.
prediction is that you'll see NVIDIA drivers for 1015. Plus the whole 64-bit, completely 64-bit. That's another, I think, factor where it would be wise for someone like an NVIDIA to hold off until a Catalina was released.
Yeah, so you've got a full 64-bit architecture. That's a word.
Yeah, TEX tier. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. And that's, everyone was complaining, oh, we're losing QuickTime. Oh, we're losing, access to these legacy legacy codecs, legacy fonts too. Yeah. But, the reason we're losing that is so we can go to a 64-bit architecture so that we can have more power and performance on these machines, and so we're not being held back by 32-bit code.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's, someone mentioned it to me today over social media that, it's not that Apple wasn't how did he put it? Basically, Apple slept on this up until now, created a vacuum for PC users to abandon, Apple's platforms for Windows. And I said, well, there's a lot of things that had to come into place. You got, ARM, what's going to happen there with the ARM architecture on the hardware side. You got, the glacial happenings that are related to the Xeon line, I hear. And then you have Catalyst, which we once knew as Marzipan, which is going to be the whole, iPad OS, Mac OS thing. And then there was one other thing I was thinking of, Thunderbolt 3. Thunderbolt 3 and USB-C are finally like the thing. It's not a question of, oh, okay, is this going to be, what's going to be next? This is it. We know what Thunderbolt 3 and what USB-C, what that connector looks like. And now all of that kind of came together. I guess that was another thing I was thinking of when I saw this Mac Pro. It's like, there you go. Because people were, for years, right? They were saying if you want to build a Hackintosh, for example, which, can we say that on this podcast? I don't know. But if you wanted to build one, people were like, where's my Thunderbolt cards? And it's like, well, you can't get Thunderbolt cards because it's not available, Or if you do, you'd have to get a specific card or supplemental piece of hardware to support that for this motherboard. And that was vendor specific. And now it's like, no, Thunderbolt 3 is Thunderbolt 3 is USB-C is USB-C. So, yeah, all those things converged, and we saw what happened yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, again, back to our modularity, is when Thunderbolt 4 becomes a thing, we can do away with the existing I/O card and replace it with a new I/O card, which is a thing that we couldn't do with, the last 6 years worth of Macs.
Right. No, exactly. Right. Absolutely.
So there's a huge amount of updates that are going to be, Isaac, I think you're right. It's just the stars had to align. We had to get all the right pieces at the right time, and now I think we have them. And it wasn't just that. We also had to have, post the loss of Steve Jobs, we had to have an Apple who remembered who their core audience is and why that's their core audience and why they got where they got, I think part of it is like an identity issue. I think Apple's returning to its identity.
Apple's business is so much iPhones, dominantly now.
Yes.
But this is something that's very niche. This Mac Pro, and I'm so thrilled that Apple is paying attention to those pros, the pros that really need this. If you can't afford it, that's fine. Get an iMac Pro or get some Mac Minis if you want, or I don't know if the old Mac Pro is even available anymore.
Well, and we're only talking about the creative professional. There are those that, we're in, a highly statistically driven, level of computation that needed that work. I mean, the only agency I come up with is like NASA. But I can't confirm that. But it's like, okay, so like you have all these other that aren't necessarily in, the creative work that just need a number crunching powerhouse, and kaboom, this thing is arrived.
I always forget about them. Yeah.
That's a good question. I've got a number of friends who work over at JPL, and I've got a friend who is on the network administration side, and the systems administration side. I should ask him what he thinks of it. And I'm almost positive that he'll say that he can't stand the idea because it's on Mac OS and he loves everything to be open, and he's not into people keeping IP to themselves for the computer realm. But I will be interested to see from like a computation standpoint if this is something that those guys would be interested in, or if they think that it's still too much of a closed system.
Absolutely. It's, everybody knows they're not, no matter what Apple does, they're not going to be able to please everybody. It's not a surprise. It doesn't please everybody. I think the biggest gripe people are talking about is the cost, but that's not a surprise. I mean,
no. And to that about, and maybe this is a separate line item, but to the display and the separate monitor and things like that. And I know, like, I can think of a couple names right now who might call me out on this, but okay. So a Sony monitor, a reference monitor, as they cited, is tens of thousands of dollars. And they sought to reproduce that or to make something that is up to that level, and it's sub $10,000.
Right.
And yes, I know the joke is the stand that it's $1,000 or whatever, but it's like, okay, but if you want the thing that is a cohesive package, it's like, well, it is what it is. And believe me, I was totally like, I heard the audible, like, when they, or maybe more like a, huh? Like, are you crazy? But,
No, but listen, this is what Apple does. I mean, this is not a surprise. Apple does this all the time.
Yeah. Well, and Peter Wiggins was on the ground, and I got a message from him last night. He said he saw the monitor sitting next to the Sony X300, which is kind of like the standard grading reference monitor for HDR.
Reference monitor?
That's not just Netflix's. Like, it is the standard for HDR grading.
Okay.
It has been for the last 2 or 3 years, and he said that it outperformed the X300 at a fraction of the price, right? Because the X300 is $43,000, I think.
Correct.
You've got to be kidding me. That's
$43,000, and so for almost a tenth of the price, you're getting something. And I said this in the video that I put out yesterday. The X300 is not capable of doing 1,000 nits full display. It can do 1,000 nits in a region of the display without overheating, and it can only do it for a very short period of time. So you cannot. There's actually HDR reference monitors in general have had this tendency to, when you exceed a certain brightness within the screen, it'll actually dim the display so that it doesn't overheat. So the fact that this monitor can sustain 1,000 nits of full screen white, you can have full white at 1,000 nits, and it can sustain that without overheating. That means that we can actually grade for 1,000 nit brightness in a way that we never could before. So you can actually grade for, now mind you, your televisions at home are still going to have issues reproducing 1,000 nits full screen brightness for any period of time. But we've got a monitor that can sustain 1,000 nits, and it can actually go up to 1,600 nits of peak brightness. So it can regionally do 1,600 nits of peak brightness, which is very, very impressive. So it's outperforming in terms of brightness, and the contrast ratio, from what I've heard, is even more pleasing and better than what we've got on the X300. But that's going to be something that we're going to have to actually test, in kind of more of a hands-on scenario.
So awesome. FCPX says Patrick
Ryan
has.
Wilburn.
Hello, Ryan.
It says Patrick has great lighting. Well, tell him why you look so good, Patrick.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I'm like, every time I look at Patrick, I'm like, I gotta up my game here. I'm sorry, Ryan.
But
I'm sorry.
Patrick, tell him what you're using for the webcam.
Well, I've got the Red Raven plugged into a Blackmagic Ultra Studio.
So there you go, right there.
And in addition, the other thing I didn't tell you, Richard, is that I've got an Aperture LS1 bouncing off of a 6x soft.
Okay. Listen, Wellborn. I'll plug in my camera next time. Okay, I'll plug it for you. For you, I'll plug it.
I mean, I had all this stuff up, and I just hadn't put it away from when we shot yesterday for the response video to the Mac Pro. So instead of putting it all away like I'd anticipated, I was like, man, I'll just turn it around and we'll do the web call this way.
Absolutely.
Everybody looks great except for me.
No,
Well,
everybody looks good.
No, I'm kidding. Come on, give me some Hollow Platitudes, YouTube or Periscope or where are we at? Facebook.
I'm going
Your
to.
hair looks great, Isaac.
Thank you, wife. Shout out to Liz.
Did your wife comment?
Oh no. She's a cosmetologist by trade, and she cut my hair.
Oh, got it. You're shouting out to your wife for having done your haircut.
Indeed.
Got it.
I'm sorry, Richard. Let's
No
continue.
problem. Well, I think we're adding somebody here. I'm calling somebody right now.
Oh no. Gallardo!
Oh man.
What's happening?
It's Tony.
Tony,
It's
what camera
Tony.
are you on?
What's up?
What camera are you using?
I am using my little A7. Hold on.
Oh man. Come on.
Go. See that? I heard that Ryan
I'll
was
be
talking
right
about
back.
how
I'll
awesome
be right
lighting.
back.
the camera
Uh-oh.
was for the picture, so had to jump on with A7S.
That's hilarious.
Welcome,
What's
Tony.
going on?
Tony,
So-
you're just a little bit out of focus.
Who is?
Tony.
Oh, okay.
Now
You
he's
know,
a
I
lot.
talk to Tony like we're like old friends, but
there-
this is
there
the
we
first
go.
time I think we've been in the same space here.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the same thing. It's like, have we met before?
But I
I
follow
know
you
you.
at work. Thank you.
Well,
Thank
I met Isaac at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
2 years ago, okay. Speaking of the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, Apple has announced the Final Cut Pro and the Mac Pro are going to be coming out later this fall, which just coincides with the time the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit is going to happen.
Where is this? Where is this?
Looking at
Where
Patrick.
is this?
Hello,
Which,
Patrick.
I gotta find out where this. Where'd you see this information? I want to see this.
okay, on apple.com,
/ Final Cut.
yes.
Ooh, coming this fall. Accelerated performance with metal. I wonder what that's going to be for.
Yeah. You know what that's going to be for? That's going to be for my scrolling timeline finally.
Man, here's the
Finally
thing,
did.
Richard. You keep baiting, you like holding your breath on that. I don't know, man. They've still got to support computers that aren't running on Catalina and aren't running 64-bit, right? Or do you think that we're going to lose everything pre-Catalina on this?
No, of course not. They're always going to go back, but there's always been an option for things. So you can always have an option. Not you can turn it off. You cannot use it. But listen, I've been told by reliable people it's been in there since version 1. The scrolling timeline has. So it's just a matter of when they turn it on.
Wow.
You know, if I buy a Mac Pro, if they say you can get it with the Mac Pro, I'll buy a Mac Pro.
Okay, so let's see. Coming
Wow.
this fall, optimized for the all-new Mac Pro, up to 3 streams of 8K ProRes. So it's saying that Final Cut will take advantage of the Afterburner card, which I'm not surprised by.
Right.
Also, has anyone asked themselves where they got 8K ProRes RAW footage for the demo yesterday?
From you? Did they get it from you?
ProRes RAW. No.
You can't. Yeah. So you can't acquire that on an Atomos or an Atomos recorder.
I thought they
AK ProRes
announced
RAW.
something's coming.
Sitting here, they announced their Nano, which I think can shoot. Here, let's.
Neon?
Atomos.com.
Is it neon?
No, oh yeah. What did I say? Nano.
Nano.
I meant neon. You're right. It's the neon.
Yes.
Is it on the website? Neon.
There was an announcement this morning about an update to the Atomos recorders. Maybe it was the 80K announcement.
Oh, I also just.
Oh
got-
yeah, 6 hours ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atomos clears up a big mystery surrounding the new Mac Pro. Here, let's see. One of the big mysteries was the presentation of the new Afterburner card that can create playback for up to 3 streams of 8K ProRes RAW. That's amazing, of course, and presumably Apple can create ProRes RAW files in whatever format they want. But for the end users, the 2 big platforms for capturing ProRes RAW, the Atmos Shogun Inferno and the DJI Inspire 2, don't capture 8K. So that left a mystery. What was this platform? Blah, 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 blah. To be excited about the blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just tell us the thing.
That's
I like
coolest
that blah blah blah.
Feature among all those is the upgradability with the monitors built around a replaceable master control unit that can be swapped out later as workflows evolve.
Mhm.
Yeah, but how did they capture 8K.
Somebody
Atmos
was
truly
live
would
streaming
love to
yesterday.
talk about 8K option at Cinegear. What camera did they use?
Somebody was live streaming yesterday at the event, and there was an unannounced 8K camera
Is that right?
there. Yes, from a
Oh.
major manufacturer.
Oh, yet
Okay,
to
let's
be
take
yet to be
guesses. Who do we guess?
disclosed?
Who do we guess it was?
All right, Richard, who's your guess? Who do you think had the unannounced camera?
Well, doesn't Red already shoot 8K?
Yeah, but they're not going to do ProRes RAW.
Oh, okay. I don't think it's Panasonic. They just announced the S1H, which does 6K. So I don't think it's them.
We don't think it's Panasonic. Okay, so not Panasonic. Atomos typically works with Japanese camera manufacturers first.
Sony then? Well, the thing was
Oh,
that
look
Sharp
at Tony's face. Look at Tony's face.
Black
I thought
Magic.
I knew,
Oh, it
now
can't
I
be
don't
Black
know.
Magic.
No,
It can't be
not
Black
the-
Magic. Well, Sharp's already announced the 8K with the 1/8K camera, right? They've already announced that?
Yeah, but they're not going to output RAW. It's like a compressed 8K. Isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, my guess based on Tony's face is that we got a Sony camera coming.
Well, maybe not.
Atomos?
Maybe it's another. It's another
Who's doing this live
manufacturer.
stream? Whose live stream do we need to go inspect, Tony?
It was
Here's the
a-
thing: Sony
Well-
rhymes with Tony, and Tony.
Yeah, but Tony also
Twitched.
works with Black Magic, though.
Yeah,
Well-
but Atomos has not worked with Blackmagic yet on anything.
Okay.
So
And
since
Atomos has the Ninja, and Ninjas are
There's
historically
still another
Japanese.
giant camera manufacturer we haven't mentioned.
Canon,
No, there you go.
we think
Yeah.
it's Canon.
It's Canon.
The C1200, the C1900.
It's the C1400, yeah, 700 double.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Tony, you're making crap up here, and you're getting us all excited.
No, there was a live broadcast that there was an unannounced camera, 8K, that was there.
Yes, but whose live broadcast do we need to be going to
Jonathan
inspect?
Morrison.
Huh? Jonathan Morrison? Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna
Well,
have to.
I watched his live stream a little bit. He was just using like a handheld something for a while.
When you get into the green screen, it's like a 20-minute live stream.
Okay.
But when he gets to the green screen area is where you should be paying attention.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
Not
later.
that I'm getting an 8K camera anytime soon, at least not that I know of.
I'm gonna just text the guy and see if we can find out what
What the heck's going on?
what it was. I doubt he'll give us
while
that
Patrick
information.
is
But
texting. Unfortunately, I have to go, which makes me double sad because Tony just came, and this is the first
Isaac,
Tony.
Isaac.
Betty.
I know, but I want to be at the Creative Summit. It sounds like we were kind of moving in that direction. I was hoping Patrick would do like a double flip, a triple Indy, if you will, reveal.
No,
Just add to the mania of the week.
look, man, that's up to FMC to figure out when they're gonna do that thing.
It's up to Apple. Take my word for it.
Okay, yeah, well, probably.
True,
But
true.
but
yeah.
it's probably going to be November again this year. That's going to be my guess.
You think?
Because I think Apple's going to need that extra couple of weeks. Apple doesn't want to do it on Halloween like they have in the past. I think that's what the deal is. But no, we're probably going to get Final Cut Pro 10.5 and the Mac Pro. We're going to get hands-on with that at the Creative Summit. That's going to be fantastic. I mean, obviously all the training that FMC provides, including Patrick, who's one of the presenters, one of the trainers there. One of the big things is meeting the Apple Final Cut Pro team and going to Apple campus. That is a gigantic, gigantic draw. So they always have to have something new to show us. They can't show us something that's 9 months old. That doesn't make any sense. So obviously, since Apple has pre-announced Final Cut Pro, they showed a brand new version of Logic yesterday at WWDC. Brand new version, so that's probably going to come out around the same time.
They can do 1,000 tracks of audio simultaneously.
Can you imagine keeping track of that? That's just
Right.
nightmare. I mean, you
Keeping
obviously
track of 1,000 tracks.
tracks, right.
Keeping it on the track. Well, did you see that there is a new there's a new color mask adjustment?
Somebody pointed that out.
Somebody pointed that out online.
Was that in the demo? Like they snuck that in the demo?
It's
Or you
on
could see it?
their
Somebody
on
did a-
Apple It's on the Apple description.
Somebody
of
did a little screen grab
Is it?
and zoomed in
Yeah.
on it.
You can go
Show.
to apple.com, look at Final Cut, and then one of their screen grabs, you'll see
Hold on.
some new color
I'm
adjustments
on
for
the
color
website
masks.
right now.
Okay.
Well, not
HSL.
Apple.com. Not Apple.com. No,
Yeah.
no. They did a screen grab themselves.
The stuff.
Somebody else did a screen grab of the presentation and blew it up.
Smart.
No. I was
not
there
that.
yesterday. I was at
Okay.
apple.com yesterday.
Okay. Isaac, do you have anything else to say before you leave?
Yeah, I think it's a persistent narrative that again Apple has forgot that this was their core audience, but you just cannot get more definitive than yes, we support the creative professional, and not just the I guess not a certain tier, because that's another secondary part of the narrative, but yes, for high end those who serve and work in Hollywood post-production, for that level of post-production professional, the hardware and the software are there. So use it. And I'd love to hear about some success stories here in the next, year, a couple of years, to see how people are, making the most out of this. So, hey, Richard, thank you so much for having me on again.
Absolutely, Isaac. I
Patrick,
sure
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Tony, let's do it again, yeah?
Cheers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
See you later. See you later,
See you.
Isaac.
Bye.
Website.
It is on Apple's website?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. I saw a screen grab. It was kind of blurry. I thought somebody just blew it up for everybody's sake.
Can you share that screen?
Let's see here. Can I share my screen?
It won't work with Skype, but if you tell me if it's what page is it on?
Oh, guys.
What?
Coming this fall, HDR on Pro Display XDR in Final Cut. View high dynamic range video the way it's meant to be seen.
Yeah.
The gorgeous new Pro XDR delivers 6K resolution and 1,000 nits of sustained brightness for HDR editing, grading, and delivery with Final Cut Pro. This is interesting and important because previously the only way Final Cut's viewer didn't display HDR, right? So you had to go out to an outboard reference monitor. So this is saying that with the Pro Display XDR, you do not need to go through some sort of an AJA or Blackmagic box. You're plugging in directly into the Mac Pro, and you're able to grade in HDR in Final Cut Pro 10. And I know it's P3 color space, so it's not a full Rec 2020, but they did mention that they've got the various reference modes for the Pro Display, so you're able to reference in HDR P3, Rec 709, whatever. So I'm really interested to see how that turns out.
It's also interesting that they have on the website, like, coming this fall, and there's a couple of different places on here where they've got that marked, coming this fall, accelerate performance for metal, coming this fall, optimized for the new. It's not that they're announcing new stuff, but has that happened before? Where they'll say something's coming?
Frequently, no. New metal engine coming this fall. Accelerated performance with metal coming this fall. Optimized for the all-new Mac Pro coming this fall. HDR on Pro Display XDR coming this fall.
Ryan and Braden both say that there's a new version of Motion coming, and there's also some things on the Motion Apple page for Motion. It says Motion is getting HDR. If you look at the website, there's a new color tools as well. Looked like in the HD in HUD. So Motion's being updated as well.
Motion takes advantage of all the GPUs in your Mac and uses up to 28 CPU cores in processor-intensive ProRes workflows. So even though the tool set's not changing significantly, it sounds like Motion's going to be able to do some pretty insane stuff with all of your GPUs. I wonder if that counts for Motion templates, like within the Final Cut GUI. So
I hope so.
Yeah, there's some pretty insane stuff you could do there.
Especially if metal, too. I wonder how metal's going to affect it.
So, Patrick, I don't know. Have we ever met anybody from the Motion-specific team at these Final Cut Pro Creative Summits? I don't know. I wouldn't know if we did. You might know.
If I knew, I couldn't say.
Well, I mean, we meet the team.
Uh-huh.
So I just presume they're all from Final Cut, and I don't know if there's anybody specifically from the motion team. Maybe
I mean,
there'll be something.
I would presume that we've got a little mixture of everybody from
Okay.
from Video
Makes
Pro
sense.
Apps whenever
Yeah.
we go to the Creative Summit. But there are a lot of people there that we haven't met that might still be there that we don't know the names of.
Well,
So-
when we go to Apple Campus, we see a big team. I remember the first time I was there, they said look to the back, and all the people were all the way lined up in the back. So there's like dozens of people.
Compressor uses all available cores. Motion said it uses up to 28 cores. Compressor uses all available cores to accelerate CPU-based encoding jobs. You can also distribute multiple encoding jobs across cores, reducing the need for additional workstations. And Compressor harnesses the incredible graphics power in Mac Pro to render effects and complete graphics-related processes faster than ever. So that means that greater than 28 cores is theoretically possible, is what that says to me.
Okay, so let's talk about Afterburner.
Yes, let's do.
Just at the WWDC presentation, Apple said that it's going to be used for ProRes and ProRes RAW. They didn't exclude the possibility of something else being accelerated, other things.
Well, they did say it's programmable, didn't they?
I've read that.
Is that developer programmable?
It's a great question, and it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that in the near. I'm sure we've got to get some more information on that at some point. They can't just drop a word like programmable,
Right.
and not
Exactly.
follow up and tell us what that means. I mean, it is the Worldwide Developers Conference. I'm sure that some developers will find out what that means if it means anything for them.
Well,
I don't know
think-
what codecs would you hope were included in the Afterburner?
Well,
if you could
H.265, simply because that's where a lot of the 8K is coming in at the lower end of the cameras, like the Sharp, for example. So I would like to see that accelerated in H.264, since that's what I use.
Well, it's like Red announced that they're going to support Metal, so it'd be interesting to see how Afterburner can help R3Ds through Metal, or I'm not sure, but that'd be
So-
great. if they could
Yeah,
do
so
that.
at the meeting that Apple had with all the professionals about the Mac Pro, they did this giant checklist. The professionals want X, Y, Z. And Apple said, okay, we're going to give you all that, and we're going to give you this thing called Afterburner on top of that. It's just like they check so many boxes for the Mac Pro.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing that Afterburner is starting with ProRes RAW because they still want to push ProRes RAW as being
Right.
the codec
Right.
of choice. But Tony, to your point, if Red is supporting Metal, the question is, will the MPX module, will that therefore be taken advantage of by the Red codec
Theoretically.
Final Cut Pro 10?
That would make sense.
And so if you've got two of those, you would think theoretically that you should be able to get, your 6K and 8K RAW playing back at better quality as opposed to better performance.
Right.
You would think.
You could draw the line, draw the connection between them, for sure.
I still want to be able to go out to a large monitor. I've got this LG hung on my wall, and I'm just really bummed that I still have not found a single I/O box that will work with non-standard aspect ratios, both Blackmagic and AJA. I complain about this entirely too often, but I just really want to work with it in 2:1 or 2.35:1 and not have everything stretched out, and I don't want to have to deal with adjustment
AJ
layers.
doesn't account for it.
Well, what was that
Neither does
aspect
Blackmagic.
ratio Apple used yesterday? 4:1? That's what it looked like. It's
Yeah,
just
it's
like
pretty
this
wide.
little skinny strip in the middle
7:1
of this.
maybe.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
incredible.
Does the Terranex boxes from Blackmagic, did they allow you to output from the computer, from your NLE? No.
No, I mean the thing is that all of these hardware IOs, they're kind of based off of broadcast standards that
Right,
have been
yeah.
around for years, and they don't have any sort of flexibility. Whereas in software, you can say fit, fill, stretch,
Right.
whatever for your conform to an aspect ratio. And I think that whoever decides that it's worth their time to fix that first, I think is going to be very grateful that they did, especially with as much streaming as we have and the fact that
Clean
we
up.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, now that you can do infinite number of aspect ratios in your actual delivery, and now that we've got HDR displays that can actually have true black, so your screen looks like it's the size of the aspect ratio of the project.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of creative possibilities there, and I think that somebody needs to rectify that issue from a hardware standpoint.
Seems like an easy thing, or I don't know, maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not so much.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we have not seen everything having to do with that Mac Pro and all the different things yet. I mean, Apple's not going to reveal everything just at the WWDC. It's going to be coming out over the next few months. And then when it comes out, there's probably going to be more surprises. Just like the Final Cut Pro, you know, coming in the fall, a new version of Final Cut Pro coming in the fall, a new version of Logic Pro, which they debuted yesterday. 1,000 tracks, yeah, right.
Is Afterburner, is it a standard PCI slot, or is it their custom?
There was some sort of custom something where they added like additional PCIe.
It has like the Infinity Band built into it, or?
Well, that's built into
That's the GPU.
InfiniBand is built onto the GPU card. So there are two GPU chips on a single card, and Infinity Fabric Link is used to get those two to talk to each other as quickly as possible.
My curiosity would be, I guess, is if the Afterburner card could be put into a PCI expansion slot, and then use Thunderbolt 3, maybe hook it up to my iMac Pro. It's not going to be as powerful, but it'll still provide some power.
You want to use Afterburner as an external GPU?
Or I'm not sure, but it'd be interesting to see if you could still connect it to existing, like iMac Pros.
The thing is, the Afterburner is not a GPU. It's a dedicated piece of hardware specific to playing back codecs.
Right.
Kind of like the Red Rocket was for Red, but this is for Apple and for ProRes and ProRes RAW for right now.
Yeah.
So could you put it in an external enclosure and use it with your iMac or your iMac Pro? Dear Apple, we want to know.
That's what we would want to know. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
One of the things that would point towards yes for that is the Apple listened to the pros and everything else. They listen to the pros and all the check boxes for the Mac Pro, and they, who requested 8 PCIe slots and expected Apple to deliver on that?
Enough people, apparently.
Yeah, maybe Steve Jobs did on his deathbed years ago, and they were like, okay, finally, we need to fulfill this thing that Steve asked of us. Doubtful.
Damn it, Steve. Still from the grave. So it's a wish list, but I don't know. They probably wouldn't.
It seems like if you get the rack mount version, you have to order that when you order it, because it's not something you can just bolt on to a standard Mac Pro.
No, I don't think so.
So
it's like the jellyfish tower and the jellyfish rack. You got to determine which one you want ahead of time.
There you go. Speaking of that, Patrick, I'm sure you're thrilled about 2 10-gig Ethernet ports on the Mac Pro, because that means 2 jellyfishes.
It does mean 2 jellyfishes. It means, like on the feature I'm working on right now, I've been using a Jellyfish Mobile in the field and then coming back and plugging it into, a share station, which is essentially a really big jellyfish rack, but with some additional souped up stuff. It's a custom job here in-house. But anyway, I've been plugging it into that and then copying all the media over there. So we've got the media on the Jellyfish, on an OWC, and on a share station. And then now another thing with Mac Pro is the ability to add SAS for LTO. But yeah, the other thing that is really interesting, and I think I already said this, is the fact that, you've got your 2 10-gig ports, but you can also add new network cards for 25, 40, 50, and 100 gig.
Yeah.
So. And then Promise has some kind of an internal thing, a RAID that you hook up internally to the Mac Pro.
What?
It's a module, yeah.
Promise has
an NPX module.
Some kind of I think there's 2 different options, and you can make some kind of a RAID 0 with a couple of spinning drives internal to
Pegasus
the Mac Pro.
storage custom designed for new Mac Pro. Pegasus R4i and Pegasus J2i. Sounds like One's rated and one's just a bunch of drives. Is that what that is?
I don't know, but
Ooh.
yeah.
Or SSD and one's just a bunch of drives.
Learn more. 32 terabytes raw. RAID MPX module kit. Wait, so is
It's
MPX?
internal.
So MPX isn't just for that graphics card. MPX is a way to
Actual
extend the
module.
capabilities of your PCIe slot. Is that what that is?
Seems like it.
4 swappable modules with 7200 RPM SATA HDDs.
EDD.
Let me get that. And the J2i is not in the MPX. It's direct attach internal storage enclosure, as opposed to a rated kit within the MPX module.
So
I wonder if we should make a jellyfish MPX module and what that would even be. That's not a promise of a new product. That's just me.
Hey, isn't there a secret new project coming out or something was revealed? A big giant box with the blue satin.
It's June the 11th, and I think it's at the Armadillo Willie's booth, portable booth.
Portable Armadillo Willies. That's right.
So just in time for.
It's rack mountable rib cooker. So you can get your Armadillo Willie's ribs anywhere.
Does it come in a half rack unit as well?
Well, it's only for you to begin with. So you can put multiple of them in a rack, and the smoke actually rises from the bottom one up through the others.
Bottom to the top. Okay. Nice.
Yep. So it's expandable, infinitely expandable. You can cook ribs, briskets, bolognas,
turkey legs.
Turkey legs. Yes. Now we're currently compatible with mahogany and hickory and pecan woods, but we're looking to expand to cherry, peach, and
what about
mesquite.
good old fashioned like oak or mesquite? Okay, mesquite. I'll take that.
Oak. Well, look, man, I'm from Oklahoma. We don't use oak. We use pecan or hickory as our base wood, and then use some sort of fruit wood on top. What? Anyway, how did we get on barbecue? Armadillo Willie.
Yeah. So last year we got when we got the iMac Pro, everybody was ecstatic about it. The power that it had, it was the most powerful Mac ever. This thing has taken leaps and bounds above that. It really has. So I'm sure LumaForge will get their hands on one at some point.
I hope so.
Yeah, because absolutely. And like I said, I'm going to possibly buy one. I haven't decided yet. It'll either be that or an iMac Pro. But I'm good for about 6 months or a year. So if I can save up, but I've always had Mac Pros and I've loved them, and I have a recording studio that I could use it on. Besides, what kind of a new camera I'll be getting? It's going to be 6K or 8K. It sounds like. So, and then if ProRes RAW goes into some of these cameras that I might be looking at, 8K.
Yeah. Whatever that camera is that Tony won't tell us what it is.
He probably has.
Tony.
You guys said it already, and
the Canon, right?
The Canon C1400.
It's the C something, but it's not. I don't know if it's 1400. Maybe it's 1400A. The C8K. There you go.
C800.
The C8. 8x8. Maybe.
It'll be interesting. Something else that was going on in there. It looked like they had the camera on an arm and it was going around some object, and then they were compositing it in motion.
It was in a Milo arm, and that was sending camera. Looks like the motion control data to motion, maybe something like that.
How does motion do that now?
I don't. Maybe it was just getting the passes and just doing compositing, or maybe
they
was
already
actually
knew the path of the camera and therefore had pre-animated the camera.
Yeah,
but that doesn't seem.
No.
I don't know.
It's very interesting. You know what's also
Jonathan
interesting
Morrison
is damn Jonathan Morrison is on the iPhone on iOS 13 they previewed like live motion control, and they preview object occlusion of humans for AR. That's pretty
What?
sick. I would love to see that in motion and Final Cut.
Right? The ability to occlude humans.
So first they did motion tracking, full body motion tracking. So in a game, the iPhone, you could move your hands like this, and your character would do the same thing. So like real just motion tracking via the camera for AR. So
All right.
what the hell? That's badass. That would be awesome to have.
Yeah.
Available. The next was, they were doing rotoscoping of a human, so that way you can have your AR elements interacting around the person. It was
That
in the
would be-
presentation yesterday.
That would be amazing.
Yes,
That would be.
I would
Sorry,
love
I have to
both of
admit
those
I
teams
checked
to-
out after the Mac Pro portion to go shoot a video. But yeah,
Dude,
that
would
would be
sick.
amazing inside of Final Cut. Well, and the other thing that I thought was really interesting was, what did they call it? Here, I've got all of my notes from yesterday. They called it it was for Siri. What did they call it? Neural text to speech. They've got their neural text to speech engine. I forget what its proper name was, but imagine if you had the opposite, neural speech to text, and we had the ability to zoom through all of our footage inside of Final Cut, or, for example, match it up to a script. That would be a lot less work on our parts in terms of organization within Final Cut, and
Yes.
that would be super helpful. Now, I know that we already have a number of products that are out there that do some of that, but if it was native to Final Cut, that would make me very happy.
So Robert
Yes.
Krupka in our Facebook groups has said, I guess there will be a good third-party stand soon enough.
Yeah, it sounds like the third-party hardware game is going to start back up on the Mac side, which we
So
haven't seen in a long time.
That'll be interesting because it looks like it's just some kind of a magnetic connector, not any kind of a connector that it would be proprietary as far as cabling and stuff going to the display, right?
Oh, for the display?
$1,000 stand.
Their connector is magnetic, but they said they would have a Visa mount that would connect,
Right.
and then from there you can go to any other standard Visa mount that you want that
Right.
already exists.
Right.
Well, guys, I need to head out here in a second.
Excellent.
Was there anything else we wanted to talk about real quick before? I mean, Tony's got
Well, this is a heck of a way to kick off the summer for Final Cut Pro. This leaves, they're not going to say anything probably until the fall.
Yeah.
As far as anything. So we have the whole summer, rest of the summer, but it's really a great start to the summer. Has any WWDC ever had this much pro apps stuff in it, hardware, software, whatever? They announced a new version of Final Cut. They announced a new version of Logic. They have the Mac Pro. Go ahead, Tony.
Real quick, I know you gotta go, Patrick, but the
That's
whole
true.
sidecar thing with the iPad, the ability to have new controls in your iPad,
Right.
or use it as a screen, or use it as a touch device. Curious to see how that's gonna.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Talking about that, Logic has a touch screen for the iPad. They've had it for years. You can move faders with your fingers and stuff. Final Cut doesn't have a companion app like that. So maybe that's going to be coming too.
It sounded like I thought I saw somewhere that they were going to be using it with all of the pro apps, but we'll have to wait and see. The other thing for iPad that I'm really excited about is the fact that it can now connect to SMB shares. So
Yes.
literally,
Yes.
you can connect. I need to test this out, but you could connect a jellyfish to your iPad, grab whatever footage you want, put it on your iPad, and then just walk out the door, which would be really helpful for, if you're having to run
Mobile.
and gun.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, like that jellyfish behind you, Tony,
Yeah.
is that a mobile behind
It
you?
is a mobile.
It's a silver edition. We don't make that anymore.
It's a
He
classic.
spray painted it.
It's a classic.
No. It's even though it's out of focus, I can tell it's got the old
Yeah.
fan where it looks like the Rocketeer's jetpack.
It is, it's my jetpack.
Yeah, but you could theoretically plug that guy into a Wi-Fi router over DHCP on one of your ports And then through the iPad file system, you could connect over SMB using your username and password for your SMB shares, and then pull down whatever data you wanted to an iPad. So you could pull down dailies. You could pull down dailies from your Jellyfish to an iPad to review before you do a shoot, if you wanted to.
I really do need to look at that. I have like 3 or 4 uses I could do right now with that. I'm going to be calling you guys.
I need to get my hands on an iPad to actually test that out. But
That's
iPad
the
OS,
iPad Pro, right?
iPad Pro,
Yeah.
iPad OS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I need to head out. I got to lunch
All
with
right.
the director of this movie, but it's
Okay.
good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
finish up here now anyway. So, yeah, hopefully we have some more news coming out over the summer with different things. New version of Final Cut, new version of Logic, more information about what the Mac Pro can actually be doing, because I'm sure there's more information coming out. They've hinted at that there is. I mean, just the Afterburner card. Is that only going to be ProRes and ProRes RAW, or is it going to be something else? Good times. Good times.
Richard, thank you so much for having us on, man.
Absolutely, man. Talk to you guys later.
Cheers.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.